Hi, my name is Josh Freeman. I am an attorney with Freeman and Lovell, and we are a law firm that focuses on helping entrepreneurs and business owners. We want to help them understand and take the right legal risks in their process of structuring their businesses, scaling their businesses, and selling their businesses. That's what we're all about. We focus all of our time and attention on that. And this is one of our education products for this program, From Idea to Exit, to help our entrepreneurial clients do this. So, our last video, we talked about choosing an entity type. We talked about the three basic entities, the LLC, the C Corp, and the S Corp. Today, we're going to do a deeper dive into the LLC and understand more about what that is and where that comes from. So, the LLC, I threw on this awesome photo from old school New Kids on the Block album from back when I was a kid. So, the LLC is kind of the new entity, the new kid on the block when it comes to business entities. It was, it's been around for a while now, but it showed up coming out of the need for a more flexible business entity type that was somewhere in between a corporation and a partnership. And so what was created was the limited liability company. And so when this happened, the IRS said, "Hey, look, we don't want to deal with having to create a new tax code for a new type of entity. So what we're going to do is you guys can choose how you want this entity to be taxed." And so with that's why we have this, whole list of different tax options. So an LLC, when you file one, you then file an election with the IRS as to how you want to be taxed, whether you're going to be taxed as a disregarded entity, a partnership, a C Corp, or an S Corp. So, so a little more detail on that, and to kind of provide some more explanation. So what it means to be a disregarded entity is essentially to have your LLC taxed as if it were a sole proprietorship, which means you can just have one owner. The taxation is passed through, and there are no additional tax return filings. So these can be really nice things to use just to create a barrier of liability protection without adding any other complications as far as tax or other things that way. So if you're like, oh, I'm going to do a sole proprietorship, what you should do instead is an LLC taxed as a disregarded entity. Provides you the liability protection a sole proprietorship doesn't, but it also provides you the same flexibility, the lack of formalities, the lack of additional tax returns. The second one is a partnership. So partnerships have 2 to however many owners that you want them to have. Partnerships are also pass-through entities, and that's one of the reasons why these were created, because they wanted to have an entity that completely blocked liability for all of the owners and managers, but also could be taxed as a pass-through entity. And so with a LLC, your most common and most popular taxation types are the disregarded entity or the partnership. With a partnership, you do have to file an additional tax return, but the partnership and disregarded entity are the preferred taxation types of the LLC, and really the reason why they're created. To not discriminate, the IRS said you can also be taxed as a C Corp. And so if you have an LLC and you want to be taxed as a C Corp, you can do that. It's very rarely done. It sometimes is done, for a couple different reasons. But typically, if you're going to be a C Corp, just be a C Corp. Don't be an LLC taxed as a C Corp. Then there's also, you can be elect to be taxed as an S Corp. And this is a somewhat used structure. It's used for professional practices, for other entities like that. It has fewer formalities than a corporation taxed as an S Corp, but it has the same benefits of not having to have some savings in the self-employment tax and payroll tax areas. So those are kind of the things there. The S Corp does come with an additional tax return, and you do have to do work with it that way. So moving on into some of the pros of an LLC. One of the big pros and benefits of the LLC is that there's a lot of equity and payment flexibility for the owners. And so in here, I've thrown up this table. So, so as you can see, a disregarded entity, they don't have preferred shares because there's just one owner and there's no different allocations of profits and losses. So this doesn't really matter if you're in that disregarded entity camp. Where it's really nice is in the partnership camp, because with an LLC taxed as a partnership, you can have, preferred equity, preferred shares, preferred units, whatever you call them. And then you can also have different allocations of profits and losses between the owners, which is, a really nice benefit to have that way. With the C Corp, you also have the preferred shares, but the different allocations of profits and losses gets a little more complicated. And S Corp, there are no preferred shares allowed and no different allocations of profits and losses. And so as you can see here, this partnership for multi-owner, multi-member LLCs is the kind of preferred taxation type, because it grants the broadest flexibility for the entity. With regards to management, one of the nice things about LLCs is they're quite flexible in how they can be managed. If you've ever formed an LLC on your own online or other things that way, it'll often ask the question whether you want to be a member managed LLC or a manager managed LLC. We typically advise all of our clients to be manager managed LLCs, and these are kind of the reasons why. So number one is assigning authority. So say you're a member managed LLC and you have 5 owners, and one of those owners only owns 2% of the business. Under a member managed LLC, that member can still sign and bind the company as if it was like a 90% owner. And so a lot of times you don't want to have those minority owners having the ability to go and sign and bind the LLC and contracts and other things like that. Whereas with the manager managed LLC, you can have owners with, 0.25% of, of the company and small amounts and different things that way, and only have, the managers have the authority to bind. So you could have, essentially one manager, 3 managers, or however many managers you want to have. But you can exclude people from that signing authority to bind contracts on behalf of the entity. And then as far as ownership and management split, another benefit of going with the manager managed entity is that a manager managed entity, you can have different owners than you have managers. So say I wanted to own and protect my interest in a business in a holding company LLC so that it had some liability protection. I can do that, but I can also be an individual manager and not have that company be the one having the signing authority and decision-making authority and other things that way, which, if when you're doing a contract, you have to get approvals and prove who has signing authority and present written consents or other entity documents, you wouldn't have to do that. As long as it's an individual, you just have to prove you're the individual and you've got signing authority. So that's one of the benefits, is it just makes it easier to manage and easier to run. So that's kind of the management and the control flexibility is a really nice thing. Corporations, have a very, different and mandatory structure that's not as flexible and easy to do. And then kind of one of the last kind of pros is this relaxed formalities. So what that means is you don't have required annual meetings. You don't have required meetings of the managers, required meetings of the members and owners and other things like that. So that's one of the benefits as well for the, for the LLC. Whereas with corporations, if you don't hold your annual meetings and you don't follow those formalities, then those things can cause your entity to lose its liability protection, and that could be a significant problem for the company. So with regards to some of the cons of an LLC and why people don't choose to use LLCs, one of them is they're not attractive to some large venture capital firms or private equity firms or institutional investors. This has to do with foreign investors and other tax problems that can be triggered to them. And so some venture capital firms or other things will want you to be a C corp, to invest. But that trend is shifting and changing and moving more. But still, that might be a barrier if your plan is very high, quick growth and everything, ultimately with venture capital funding and leading to an IPO. The other one is with a LLC taxed as a partnership. The owners of an LLC taxed as a partnership can't also be employees of the company. So if you own the company in your own name, you can't also be an employee and have some of the benefits there. So that comes down to some of the self-employment tax issues and some other things that way. Also, in this type of it doesn't make it eligible for like incentive stock options for employees and stuff, which would be run through a corporation. So that's one of the downsides. The other one that kind of ties into that is there are no FICA savings or the employment tax savings for the owners like you can get through a S corporation, and so that's one of the downsides. But is usually outweighed by the other downsides of an S corporation. And then the other one is they don't qualify for qualified small business stock treatment and the capital gains savings that can be had at exit if you go through that program. So those are some of the cons. And then finally, what I want to talk about is kind of like where LLCs are most used. Kind of how we talked about in the last video is that, most businesses can fit within the LLC structure because of the flexible ways that it can be taxed, because of, all of the benefits that it has. Most businesses can fit. So you'll see everything from professional practices to real estate companies to technology companies, to retail, e-commerce, any type of company you'll see being formed as LLCs these days. They are, pretty much exclusively used when it comes to like real estate and holding companies and some other investment platforms and things that way. But really, the LLC is kind of an entity that works and will work kind of regardless of where you are. There may be better optimized entity forms for you specifically, but it's kind of you can't go wrong here with the LLC. So that kind of gets me through kind of the more deeper dive and explanation on the pros and cons of an LLC. Again, my name is Josh Freeman. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this. If you have questions, you can reach out to me at this email here, track me down on our website. Yes, thank you again, and good luck.